She got it on sale.
Ready? Like to call to order the Palm Springs Public Arts Commission meeting of Thursday, July 3rd, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. Jake, can you, oh, no, never mind, no roll call. Oh, welcome and introduction. Welcome to our new commissioners, Lily Hanner and Janan Cameronese.
Yes.
I had coffee with her and I just looked at it and think to call her name out. And anybody who's at the joint commission meeting met the two of them. Why don't you guys each take a minute and introduce yourself very broadly, just background that makes you relevant for the art commission. We don't need to know what you had for dinner. You go first, Janan.
And I push.
Yeah, always push the button.
All right. My name is Janan Cameronese. I have lived in Palm Springs my entire life. I graduated from Palm Springs High School in 2019, left briefly to go to Yale, where I graduated with a degree in art history and sociology with a focus on American urbanism. I've volunteered at the Palm Springs Art Museum on and off, and I was also very lucky to work as an educator with Desert X. And so I decided that I wanted to continue sort of working with our local community. But this time as a commissioner, and I'm so grateful that I was honored to be selected.
Great, thank you, Janan. Janan, as I said, Janan and I had coffee. We had very deep discussions, and I'm thrilled she wants to get into the cataloging of the collection. So great, next to you, Lily.
Hi, my name is Lily Hanner. I am 18, almost 19 years old this August. I also graduated from Palm Springs High School. I'm born and raised here. I graduated in 2024, so just recently. Currently, I'm studying art history, but I want to focus on getting a bachelor's degree in fine arts and working towards a master's degree in art history. Currently, I work at the Sunnyland Centenary Gardens as a tour guide, so the art history element, and definitely working in our archives department at Sunnylands as well currently. Again, cataloging art history is a huge thing for me right now. So.
And Lily and I first met when she was part of the Human Rights Commission. She was a student representative on the commission.
Yes.
And when I would go and present things and talk to them, she always had very pointed questions for me. So I remembered her. Anyway, welcome to both of you. Don't be nervous. As I was walking, you both said you're kind of nervous. Don't be nervous about anything. We'll walk you through it. But just everything you say is being recorded. And the camera is on. Great. Okay. Jake, can you make a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Landy. Present. Commissioner Silvera.
Present.
Commissioner Hanner.
Present.
Commissioner Kibbe.
Present.
Commissioner Cameronese.
Cameronese. Sorry, it's a hard name, and I'm present.
And Commissioner Gascon is not present. Commissioner Loya is not present. Commissioner Gonzalez is not present, and we have Chair Armstrong.
Present.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Excellent. And next item is acceptance of agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to accept the agenda as written? Lily, you have experience doing this.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda as written, sorry.
Second, excellent. Thank you, Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Public comments. One public comment was circulated, but I will read this. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Public Arts Commission on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission, and agenda items if the member of the public cannot be present later in the meeting at the time the item is heard by the commission. Additionally, members of the public may address the commission on each item listed on the posted agenda at the time each item is heard. Although the Public Art Commission values their comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned for each speaker. Jake, are there any public comments?
We actually don't have anyone in the audience. And if anybody participating via Zoom would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. We also received a letter from Rebecca Henderson, which I can read to the commission.
Why don't you wait and read that because it's actually an agenda item.
It's an agenda, item,
Yeah.
so we can look for that, thank you.
Yeah, let's do it then. That works.
And I don't see any hands from the Zoom audience, so
No.
no public comment.
Okay. Next item, election of the Public Arts Commission Chair and Vice Chair for 2025 fiscal year. Nominations and remarks for Chair and Vice Chair. Would someone like to nominate somebody to be Chair of the Commission?
I nominate Gary Armstrong.
I second that nomination. I will just note the nominations actually don't need to be seconded. The vote, we'll do a roll call vote when we approve everybody.
Any nominations for Vice Chair?
I'd like to nominate Jim Land.
Any other nominations? Okay, I will just state that Tina Gonzalez, she had an emergency and she's in Portland in her stepdaughter's in hospital. She said that she would consider being vice chair if anybody felt that we needed that. So for public transparency, I will nominate Tina because she said she would be considered nominated.
Okay. So for the position of chair, it's considered a unanimous decision with just one individual being nominated. For position of vice chair, we would have to go through a vote. And I will just go on and read off the process. As Mr. Landy, Commissioner Landy was first nominated. Can we see by a show of hands those in favor of having Mr. Landy be vice chair?
Would we make any comments before these votes are taken?
You're welcome to. It's not in my script, but you can.
Seriously, you're screwing up my ribs.
I'll make a brief comment. I'm incredibly flattered and honored that you would promote me for the vice chairman to work with Gary. And I didn't come to this meeting expecting that to happen. I should just say though that Tina and I came on the board at the same time as you did. And in the short time, the few months that we've been here working together, I've been so impressed by what she's already contributed to this project in working with Natasha on the arts inventory and really showing up in ways that I haven't had the time to do yet. And I personally intend to support her nomination over mine because I'd like to recognize how much she's done already and the promise of future that we can receive from her. And I think that she'd be a great partner if this gentleman is indeed confirmed as our chairman. And that would be my comment. But thank you so much for the nomination.
And may I make a comment?
Yes.
So I appreciate your not voting for yourself, but however, I think both you and Tina would be great vice chairs. Yes, we all came out at the same time. In my observation, and the reason I've nominated you is that your thoughtfulness and actually I think contributes a considerable amount to the discussions that we have. Then to me, the most important thing on this commission is thoughtfulness. And it doesn't always relate to the amount of work that you do, but what you can contribute into the decision making. So hence my nomination.
And I would just like to say, I think both Tina or Jim would be great. Jim is a very thoughtful, from more of an art perspective for people that don't know him. Tina is very methodical in how she approaches the process. And really the chair and the vice chair, we're not making aesthetic judgment, it's ensuring things get approved and get through the system. Everybody still has one vote on any piece of artwork, so one person with maybe not as sophisticated perspective on art has the vote as someone who maybe has spent their entire life in art. That's the value of a commission, and that's why we have representation as well. So it's really that. And I will say that, hey, thank you for the unanimous nomination, but I have, after this next term, I only have one more term on the commission. So I will be turned off council can appoint me for one more year if they think there's a need for me to be on one more year. But so I'm pleased with both Jim and Tina being on it because that allows me to sort of groom somebody to take over. Because there's a lot of work ahead and we're going to be voting on it tonight. Okay. Jim, or sorry, back to your rhythm, Jay.
Thank you. So can we have a show of hands for those in favor of Mr. Landy as vice chair? Those opposed, please say no.
You can oppose the nomination.
Yeah, it's in my script. But this, we can skip that part.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we could have by a show of hands, those in favor of Commissioner Gonzalez, please raise your hand.
You guys can vote. Oh, you
I abstain.
don't? Okay.
I abstain as well. I don't think I've worked with either of them enough.
So what do we do, Jay?
Oh, we do not have a vote, a quorum.
You don't need to work with some, why don't you explain approving for background that they don't know, like when they approve that?
You know, this is a great example. Sometimes you may not have been at a meeting when the meeting took place and the minutes are being requested for approval. And what it comes down to is your review of the minutes, your thought as to how rational they are, and your, you know, how you trust your fellow commissioners in their approving or disapproving and making comments on minutes. And so that comes up every once in a while when individuals may have missed a meeting and then the minutes for that meeting are being voted on.
Can the vote for chairman occur tonight and the vote for vice chairman occur in
Yeah.
September?
I think you can.
And I would like to actually expand on that because I don't believe that voting for chairpersons is the same as voting on minutes that you weren't at a meeting. It's a very
Yeah.
different situation. And we may need some working time to be able to have everyone vote
Yeah.
appropriately.
So we can have chair and then do vice chair in September,
Sure can.
and then hopefully we will have Tina and Natasha here in September.
Okay.
Right, well, and you know,
We do need to proceed with the actual accepting of the election to have Chair Armstrong elected to the position of Chair Armstrong. So if there's a motion and a second, could we please have that?
I make a motion to accept Chair Armstrong. Gary Armstrong as the chair.
Okay, second,
I'll second.
thank you, Janan, thank you, Lord.
and vote, please let me know your ayes or raise your hand. Okay, very good. That is 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next item, yeah, we skipped over remarks. I'm gonna make most of my remarks before we do item I3. Approval of minutes from June 5th, 2025 meeting.
I'd like to make a I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the next Public Arts Commission rather, dated June 5th, 2025.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Yeah, are you voting yes or no?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item for discussion. Discuss the Little Tuscany Neighborhood Association request to place public art in the Little Tuscany neighborhood. If you recall, they did public comment at our last meeting. And I said we could not address that and put it on the agenda. We're not voting on anything here. We're just going to discuss it and then our comments will be on the record. And then Little Tuscany can know what's going on with that. They did send a letter to me, an actual letter, not an email. Luckily, there was no anthrax. And Jay's gonna read their questions, and then we can address them very quick. But I don't think we need to spend a lot of time.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we have the representatives.
Oh, great. Okay.
Here, I'm gonna go on and let them in the allow them to talk. And I will proceed with reading the letter. Hi, Rebecca. In just a minute, we'll ask you for any comments on the request you have. I'm gonna read the letter you sent to Chair Armstrong. To the Palm Springs Art Commission, recently, the city of Palm Springs announced its invitation for neighborhoods to house city artworks in their locales. The Little Tuscany Neighborhood Organization wants to investigate this possibility. We have questions regarding this procedure. Does the city have an inventory of art pieces available? After seeing the inventory, is it possible to have a first-hand view of the art? Is this considered a loan to the neighborhood? If so, what are the length and particulars of the loan? Who oversees and who pays for transportation of the art to its new destination? Does the city have an approximate cost? Who pays for installation of the art in the neighborhood? What is the approximate cost? Who pays for insurance on the art during transportation, installation, and duration of its new location? Is there an approximate cost for these? What are the specifics of the ownership of the land where the art will reside? City-owned, county-owned, privately owned? Do you have a map available of land that is appropriate in our neighborhood that can be used? Is Little Tuscany the first neighborhood to utilize this program? If not, what other neighborhoods have been involved? Can we learn from their experience? What else does Little Tuscany need to know about this program? We will attend the July 3rd, 5:30 meeting of the Palm Springs Arts Commission. We look forward to getting more information and answers to our questions at that point. Thank you very much. Best regards, Rebecca Ann Hendrickson.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Jay, can you circulate that to the commission?
Well,
Just, I think it's good for people to have on hand. First of all, we don't really have a program that enables neighborhoods to get artwork. We did have 3 years ago a neighborhood grant program where neighborhoods come to us and say we'd like some money to sort of like seed money, and it was for $5,000 per neighborhood. And they could then get that. Well, we changed it because we found that two things were happening. One, we didn't, or not we, the commission at the time did not accurately define what a neighborhood was. So you get one block asking for something, but not the next, and the next block would want something and saying, well, this is our neighborhood. And the $5,000 really wasn't enough. They all ended up coming to us saying, we need more money to do this. The one that was the most successful was actually the Critter Alley or Creature Alley on Old Las Palmas. And that one started where we gave them $5,000, and then they came and they donated the $20,000 to the piece of artwork. And then they gifted that to the city. So it was actually an inverse of what Little Tuscany is asking for. And they took that money, they got the money from when they were doing Modernism Week tours. Everybody pays, the homeowners get it. Old Las Palmas keeps that money in a reserve, and then they use it for what they call their beautification committee. And then we sort of transformed the neighborhood program into the park program because it was much easier for us with the park. City owns the land. We didn't need to get encroachment permits for right of ways or anything like that. So right now we have the park program. There's nothing near Little Tuscany because there's no park near Little Tuscany. The other question that you had was what art do we have in storage? And we really only have 2, maybe 3 pieces in storage, and neither of them are appropriate for Little Tuscany. They're just so big. One was in the original downtown mall. It's a massive piece, and the other 2 were by the old Bank of America and then in front of the museum. And those are so distressed and need probably $50,000 to $75,000 repair to make them presentable. What you can do is if you have any homeowner money or homeowner association money, you can come to us at that point. And it doesn't mean that we can't put something there eventually. The first thing we would start with is location. And then once we get the location, we see, okay, what are the permit issues? What kind of artwork is appropriate there, rather than just saying, hey, here's a piece of artwork, find someplace for it. And at that point, it's still a piece of public art. So that means the city's responsible for it, the city's responsible for maintenance of it. And Did I miss anything from the questions?
She asked fantastic questions and I appreciated that explanation and replying.
Yeah.
Are there spaces in Little Tuscany for the display of public art to your knowledge? And does that neighborhood have any other pieces that currently exist there?
I guess it depends on what the boundary to Little Tuscany is. We do have that one piece that is the pillar of recycled material and cement. Is that Little Tuscany?
I believe
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
off Racket Club. That's Little Tuscany.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that is technically a piece there. But there's nothing else. So Rebecca, did my answers make sense to you?
Yeah, they did. I just, and I wish I had it at hand, but I thought within the last 6 months, there was something in the newspaper or else in one PS, which stated that the city, it sounded like, wanted to adopt a program to bring city-owned art into the neighborhoods. And actually, somebody who's also on the board of Little Tuscany brought that up. But was that a misunderstanding then? Because, yeah, we thought that there was something that had been announced, that the city of Palm Springs was starting a program whereby neighborhoods could house art owned by the city.
Did you know what they're conflating? I haven't heard anything.
I have not heard anything about that, and commissioners, I think you would know. Perhaps there was maybe some talk about the desire to have more artwork in the downtown area as part of the convention center redevelopment, but I don't know specifically for getting public art commission art into neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that answers our concern then.
Yeah.
And I
Laura?
also,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Rebecca.
well, I was just going to say that I also am aware, of like Olas Palmas has art, and I think there's the big red piece down in Sunny Dunes area. So what you're suggesting is if Little Tuscany wants to have an additional art piece besides the one with the concrete and plastic layers, kind of dealing with archaeology for the future, which is off Racket Club in Crescendo, that it's up to us to use some of our funds and perhaps get more funds to purchase art that we'd be interested in, and then go through the Parks Department and go through all the city requirements in order to get that to happen. Is that correct?
Well, I think if I understand more correctly, I think that if you wanted to do a piece on where the city has some jurisdiction over the land, and you had funds to spend on art, we could go through the Arts Commission process, which would be, you could put out an RFP as a HOA or a city or a neighborhood organization. Bring what you chose to us for approval. It would be transferred into the city's collection, and then we would maintain it going forward. And your fund should be used to both commission the piece and install the piece. And there are certain code things through building permits and whatever. I think the misunderstanding may have been, I remember a conversation, it's really about bringing it into the parks and the communities, which is probably what you heard. And it was just misunderstood that it was actually communities, neighborhoods, rather than the parks in the neighborhoods.
Okay.
If you do have funds, there's two ways you can do it to further expand on what Commissioner Kibbe said. Olas Palmas found the artist himself, who actually is the same artist who did the piece on Warm Sands, like that Warm Sands area.
Mhm.
And they found him, he did some sketches, and then they came to us and said, we want to proceed with this. Are you okay with it? And we voted at that point. Now another way to do it is find a very specific piece and say, we'd like to get this. If it is on city property, you can do it as temporary art. But honestly, that's kind of a nuisance because you're paying for the maintenance or the installation of it, and if it's just temporary, why bother? I can tell you can find some really wonderful pieces for not a lot of money. The pieces that are in Olas Palmas, the artist charged $25,000 each, and that includes installation.
Might even be possible that you have working artists who are residents in your neighborhood. There could be some meaningful interactions in the result could be that truly local artist is displaying in their area. The reason that I asked, this is Jan speaking, the reason I asked questions about how many works are there and learn from you that learn from my colleagues and from you that there was one piece. Is because I wanted to learn, as I did, that your neighborhood perhaps is underrepresented in exhibition of art. And I won't speak for everyone else around the table, but I've seen everyone, including myself, be supportive of art appearing in more and more neighborhoods. So you don't have people here who are doubtful about what you'd like to do, but the opposite, possibly supportive. For that, we would need to figure out what places, as Libby said, are under city jurisdiction and make it a simple matter to approve those locations for the installation of art under our authority. While you and your neighbors maybe hustle to identify artists and think about part or whole funding as the old Las Palmas group did for their exhibition.
What I would suggest, Rebecca, is talk to your community association, figure out a location. And then one of our commissioners can meet with you and review the location, and then we can take it from there and figure out next steps. I will say that for us to purchase and install or even commission a piece of artwork is about a 1-year process. And
Okay.
that's just with getting the work fabricated, getting it approved all the way, unless you find an artist who has a piece already done.
And that's, I'm sorry, what did you say? I missed that.
Unless you find an artist who has a piece that's already completed and you say, we really love this piece and we want this right in this location.
And there may be in all the galleries, in the Coachella Valley that you can speak to the gallery owners and possibly they represent local artists or an artist that you would like to have in there, but such that you don't have to actually fabricate it.
Yeah.
Find a
Right.
piece that you can present, it would speed up the process.
But I would start with the location, figure out
Yeah.
the location and go from there.
Okay.
Great,
Thank you all
thanks.
very much. I appreciate your time and
Great.
expertise.
I appreciate your one for. Next item for discuss and consider approval of artwork reimbursement request in the amount of $6,500 from the Royal Palm Hotel for the artwork called Low Des Ranch Rocks by artists Frank and Hank, located at 1700 Palm Canyon Drive. Jay, explain this to us, please. I know nothing about this.
Yes, I'm actually hoping the applicant will show up and be able to provide more information on this, but let me see if I can pull up the images of the project they have. And then we can go from there. So commissioners, as you know, applicants who pay their commercial art fee are entitled to request a reimbursement of the art fee. And in this case, the Royal Palm Hotel did $20,000 worth of improvements and paid art fees in the amount of $6,500. And here's the permit fees that they had paid, $6,500 is highlighted down there. And the art project they're requesting reimbursement for are these floating stones in front of the Royal Hotel. And let's see if I think I may have something a little closer. And that is basically the request is to request the art fees that they paid to have them back to help cover the cost. $6,500 of this project, and I'm sorry, they let me know that the art project was $20,000.
Yeah.
And this would cover $6,500 of that.
Are these, they kind of look like floating potatoes, right? This is by a known artist.
Frank and Hank. And they've got an Instagram page, and the Instagram page does have some other artwork.
So you have checked it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know the material that's been?
I think
Yeah,
Mr.
but-
Chair mentioned it was potato.
Mm.
I'm sorry.
The
Um,
description just says it's a stone art installation.
No, I haven't seen.
Yeah, and I'm just putting this on screen for the first time. It does say stone art installation, 8 large ranch rocks, so it sounds like they're actually rocks.
They're real rocks? They
Yeah.
look very uniform for rocks. Are they finished? Are they all natural? We don't know any of that?
We do not know that, I can't answer.
Only because surrendering, you know, from a purely aesthetic is a very interesting use of rocks. This as an installation in light of the desert, but I'm wondering what they're made of and how else it's say.
It looks like this is sort of a graphic of.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
I know it's not a ton of money. I sort of have questions on the aesthetic of it and the installation component.
absolutely.
Are they in place now?
I don't believe so.
Because on the application, it says. I thought it said. Date of installation 5/28 to 6/4.
We can check it out. We can kind of table the items we have on.
Yeah, I'd like to go look.
Yeah, and I'd like to make some comments. I do think that is architecturally significant building. Right, if we have a picture that shows more of the architecture with this, I think there's another picture, right? And I think the whole objective should be whatever's there, if we approve it or not, is to not interrupt the fact that. It has the A-frame, you know, it has those components that. Get mentioned a lot in architectural review of our architecture.
This is not a class 1, class 2 building or anything, Jim?
I don't think so, but I'm just saying from its form and whatever, so. They're basically making it part of the landscape.
New commissioner comments.
I'm gonna go and look at the artists responsible, because I'm curious about their other projects. To me, at first glance, this is kind of interesting, curious, fun and appealing to take a common ingredient of our landscape, but then suspend them in the air the way that they are. So they both look natural, but then they look intentional. I don't think that they serve their application that well with just this one rendering. There might have been more visual aids to go with it. But I'm open to the idea that and my role here that I can say, I do agree that this is a worthwhile exercise in asking for reimbursement in part of the commercial art fee that this organization has already paid.
Just to add to that, since their Instagram page is listed on here, I pulled up their page. This is a reoccurring piece that they do. So from what I can tell, which again, this is from what I can tell, this a pair of artists, I believe, this is a reoccurring element, and most of their other pieces are slabs of stone that are layered together, and then the outside makes that. That's why I think you're thinking of that uniform look. I don't know if this is how these were made entirely, but the other pieces that they're showing on their Instagram page are layered slabs of stone that are pieced together to make a rock look like on the outside. But it's still stone cutting, so it is still made of stone in terms of the actual material. But this is a reoccurring project that they've done multiple times. This seems to be sort of a niche for them.
I also would say, given the marble piece that Des Bex did, there's a lot of things I noticed throughout the desert that are playing off of the materials of the desert. In formats to either talk about the mountains or talk about the terrain. So to Jim's point, I actually find it compelling. I'd like to see it in person, but it is interesting use of material.
Yeah, I'd second that, and add one more component. To me, the magic of this will be how it's lit up at night. Because I'd like to see how these rocks look if they're floating, because you won't see the support beam. And Jay, I'd like to also make a request that in the future, when we get these, we're notified in advance so we can go inspect them.
Sure.
You know, the murals we've seen, because they were up and we knew what their money was coming back, but I think that it does disservice to the applicant if we're just looking at a rendering as opposed to the real thing.
Yeah, just rendering thing.
Yeah.
I think the magic for me is during the day with the cast shadows.
Yeah.
When you have the cast shadows, then you really see they're floating.
Yeah.
And they should have done it there. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question as well. When we approve, whether we do or not this project, but in future, when we approve a, art in lieu of fees, and, accept, developer's proposal, does the art that has been paid for then become part of the city's art collection? Because we have essentially, blessed it and allowed money to be, taken from us because it's been spent by them already by this other piece. So does it remain their property and does not part of the art collection?
So there's a couple ways that works. They can use their money to say, this is what I want in front of my building, but I'm giving this to the city as a gift, but I'm choosing the artwork in front of my building. The other way is they can say, we're using the funds for artwork we want. Now, the key is if they sell the building, if they decide they can't switch the artwork out and put in bougainvillea there in 6 months. So they have to always have that amount of revenue attached to art in that location. And they need our approval if they switch it out.
So it's a title, is it added to title?
I don't know, it's in our, it's in the.
We enter an agreement
Yeah.
for each of these, and we just did Thompson, for example. And all the artwork, the changes, they have to notify us if we're gonna be doing anything with it, so.
So it's in some way goes with the building, whether it's be registered on the title or not, there's a.
Yes.
Yeah, for a certain amount of money attached to art. I will state, Palm Desert has in their collection, they have the Palm Desert Public Art Collection, and then they have a developer funded collection,
That's what I was getting
Yeah.
at. That's what it sounds like.
which something to consider when we redo our ordinances is a developer funded collection. Okay,
We should add that to an agenda because I think it's an interesting discussion, given the amount of revenue that gets generated
Yeah.
through development fees.
Commissioners, I actually have the applicant available.
oh, great, okay.
If we could put them through. William, I'm going to allow you to talk. Thank you.
Hi everyone, how are you? It's so nice to see all of you, and I hope that you're all having a fabulous day today. I appreciate you reviewing our beautiful art, hopeful installation, and I appreciate all your comments. They're very well received. And us too, our position is really to always capture the essence of the beautiful landscapes of the desert and really bring them to life to our beautiful, city lovers and city goers and to place this in front of our hotel, really amongst the landscape, really positions these beautiful rock installations as a hopefully something that stays and is loved forever for the future. Um, Lily, you mentioned it right. There are these installations. He does these installations, the artist, in several places, and he continues to grow in his popularity. And pretty soon, he's going to be a pretty famous artist that is going to be pretty world renowned. And to have his art to be featured here in our city in front of our hotel is just beautiful, and really excited for this installation. Hopefully it's first of many here, and this one particularly is going to be very special, and we hope that our individuals who come to the city of Palm Springs and to the beautiful Coachella Valley really come and visit us and really fall in love with what we create here together.
Can you tell us a little bit about the artist so that we have some background and who he is or who they are?
Frank and Hank he's one artist. Frank and Hank is his name, and he's known as a dual. He has a dual personality kind of thing where he's one moment he's one, and he's a very unique individual from Colorado. He lives off the land, and he's very connected to the landscapes of Colorado and Western landscapes. And he was inspired by his childhood to really bring together these beautiful, huge kind of boulders, I guess, to life as artists, and as art, living art, and he infuses different metals as well into the actual artworks. Not all of them, but some of them are fused together as gold or metal or some kind of silver and rock pieces. So I mean, he has a really unique space. I'm happy to share his profile. I think we shared it on the actual application, his profile for his Instagram as well as his website. But he's Colorado based, and he's ready to come over and help install this for us, and hopefully, and have showcase it for their city goers and for you as well to come and enjoy it as many times as you like.
When is installation?
We had it set for the end of May, we're waiting for now final approval to go move forward, and then we can, I think mid-August, I would say.
And one of the things that I personally would like before we approve it is I'd like to see a lighting scheme for at night. And I think, as you said, because this is artwork, and again, this isn't a reservation about the aesthetics, but we need to start insisting on plaques that give the
Oh, yeah.
artist and the artist information, so if you could show us where that would be as well. I think it helps elevate the piece and actually helps elevate your location.
Absolutely, and great comment. And it's part of the actual installation. There will be a dedicated plaque to the actual piece, as well as lighting. The landscape has already existing lighting, and it looks beautiful at evening. But we'll make sure to give it some beautiful luminescence in the evening as well with additional lighting. Not too heavy because we don't want to deter from it, but we definitely want to add some lighting to make it even more, stand out, to stand out a little bit more.
You should make sure you abide by the city code so that since it's on Main Road, they have some rules around the lighting and whatever. Lily brought up that some of the pieces that she saw on the Instagram were slabs of stone reformed into rock, I believe she said. Are these solid or are these fabricated and into these forms?
No, these are going to be actual. It's going to be kind of a morph. It won't be a specific. It won't be several different slabs. Again, I didn't want to have too much. I don't want to restrict the artist too much, because what he does is really he captures the essence of the location of the place, and he creates something that's unique to the location. Unless we specifically tell him this is what we want, we gave him freedom to really bring to life what the vision is for Palm Springs and for Royal Sun together. And he put this something together. I haven't seen the actual finished product yet because it's still in progress, but it's going to be a combination of different kind of, some kind of metal as well as stone as well.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not asking you to dictate to the artist. I'm asking that we know what it will be, because that will be essential for us to do an approval. So if he can give you a write-up or if he can give you
Yeah.
pictures, that would be appreciated. So if some of these are actually metal, that would be good to know.
Yeah.
We need more detail about what actually it will be.
If he's
Yeah,
doing
that's-
installation in August, that's 6 weeks away. Surely he's made at least one to sort of alleviate fabrication concerns. And as I said, I would like a nighttime lighting plan and just give us a rough location of where the plaque will be.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other questions? And then we'll put off the vote on this and readdress it in September.
I agree with both Commissioner Kibbe and Commissioner and Chair Armstrong. I believe we do need to see at least one picture of one of these boulders. We understand that you need to wait for final approval. But just to give us some more information,
Yeah.
I definitely would appreciate to see at least some of the piece in progress.
Yeah. And again, as somebody who lives in the south end of Palm Springs, I'm thrilled you're doing artwork there. Let's just make sure it's the best quality from our perspective. I have no doubt and questions the judgment of the artist. Let's just ensure sort of we're comfortable making that vote and getting you your money back.
And you have a promise that it's going to be very elevated, very tasteful, and very well done from our perspective.
So just a real quick question, if they're intending to install in August and we're intending to vote in September. Just to note the risk of that if we don't vote in favor, not that I'm suspecting that to happen. You would still need to do an additional piece if you wanted to be reimbursed, if it was not reimbursed for this piece, am I correct? Emily, that we can know that?
Well, ordinarily, the way the ordinance is set up is that the property owner would have to proceed with installing the art piece and then ask for a reimbursement. So if the reimbursement did not come through, was not approved, it would have been produced at the property owner's sole expense.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, William.
Thank you, guys. Have a beautiful day, and thank you for your time. And we look forward to bringing this to life together in our beautiful city.
Very good. Next item. This is a big one. Discuss and approve renaming the Public Arts Collection to the Palm Springs Art and Culture Collection and establishing subcommittees. One subcommittee piece is currently the collection that should be moved to a potential cultural collection. And the second subcommittee is right at the consideration and approval process for new pieces to be considered. I have some words because this is a very important thing we're doing. This will be the most important thing you do in your time on the commission. Okay. In my time on the Arts Commission, we've had at least 4 major divides, and every one of them hinged on the same core question. Is this public art? Art can and often does serve 2 distinct but vital roles. It can invite personal reflection, creating space for individual interpretation and emotional connection. And it can deliver a civic message, communicating shared values, history, identity. Many works do both, offering layered experiences that are both once intimate and collective. Understanding this dual role is key to navigating the increasing complexity of our work. The Public Arts Commission has taken on more responsibility, and with it comes honest debate about what qualifies as art and what role it should play in our city. Our collection reflects that complexity. Some pieces are artist-driven, commissioned through a formal process, rooted in creative exploration and designed to engage. Others are civic or commemorative, memorials or markers that honor our community's history and values, but were not created primarily as public art. To reflect this reality more clearly and responsibly, I'm proposing that we rename our holdings to the Palm Springs Art and Culture Collection, with 2 distinct but equally respected branches. The Public Art Collection is reserved for artist-led curated works selected through our existing public process. And then the new Cultural Collection, which will include civic and commemorative works, often donated or initiated outside the formal public art pipeline. Let me be clear. No pieces will be removed from the Commission's stewardship. No pieces will be added to either collection without public review and council approval. What this does establish is clear criteria for categorization, maintenance, and importantly, acceptance, ensuring each piece is placed where it best belongs. If this is approved, we'll create 2 subcommittees, one to develop submission and acceptance guidelines for the cultural collection with public input and collaboration from other city commissions where appropriate, and the other to review our existing inventory and recommend whether any work should be reclassified under this new structure. Let me give you 2 tangible examples. The Morris Kite Memorial plaques, which the Commission voted to accept last month, are a good fit for the cultural collection. While their installation is meaningful and their message vital, they were not conceived through a creative public art lens. They are civic in purpose, commemorations of a legacy rather than interpretive artist-led expressions. Now, contrast that with the Ace Memorial. Some may argue it also should be moved to the cultural collection. I mean, after all, it is a memorial. But in my view, it should remain in the public art collection. Why? Because it fundamentally is a work of art. Created by internationally renowned artist Philip K. Smith, the piece is site-specific, abstract, and fully aligned with this established practice. Though it was donated, it was developed in close partnership with this commission, city staff, and the broader community. It isn't figurative, doesn't instruct, it invites. That transforms its environment, speaks the language of public art. Yes, it honors lives lost to AIDS, but that doesn't make it less artistic. In fact, that's where public art is often at its most impactful, where it bridges civic memory and personal emotion through design, material, and light. That's why it belongs exactly where it will be. And this is precisely why the distinction between the collections and the criteria that define them matters. And that's why I believe this commission is ready to lead the way. We're not afraid of nuance. We're not afraid of responsibility. We're here to serve the city with care, integrity, and vision. The gates of the dog park, yes, they are a piece of public art. That classification is up for grabs. We'll also be working with staff to identify a separate funding stream for the cultural collection since our public art ordinance restricts those funds to artist commission works. This will be the most important thing any of us do at our time on commission. But we're not inventing this alone. Cities like Portland, Minneapolis, and San Diego have already created familiar frameworks to distinguish between civic expression and artistic authorship, elevating both without conflating them. Because both collections matter. One invites reflection through art, the other preserves civic memory. Together, they tell Palm Springs' story, and both deserve our thoughtful stewardship. Are there any questions? I know you will have questions.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay, Commissioner Carlos.
Roughly speaking,
Yeah.
From your experience,
Please use your
what would be the
microphone.
percentage? Roughly speaking, from your experience, what would from the collection?
Yeah.
What would be the percentage of art space, public arts and cultural civic ones?
My gut, knowing the collection, probably a third of it is, I would consider to be cultural.
Okay,
So for example, the John F. Kennedy bus. John F. Kennedy bus was donated to the city in 1964. It used to be on the median in Tockwitz, and it was donated the year after Kennedy was assassinated. It's donated because he'd been to the city of Palm Springs 4 times. The city then moved it from Tockwitz, it was right in front of City Hall. They moved it to the airport where it is now, because they were redoing the landscaping in that median. So again, it's a memorial. It is not something that talks about his legacy. It is, there's, now again, it elevates the city. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, but when I look at pieces in the collection like the section 14 marker at Sunrise and Ramon, you probably don't even know it's there. And yet it's part of our collection. From an artistic perspective, you look at pieces like that, or the Kennedy bust, or the Sonny Bono Memorial bust, and you think, well, they're not great art, and yet they deserve to be elevated. So by pulling them out of the collection, they are elevated because they're all of a sudden lead pieces in the cultural collection, as opposed to not being as artistic as some of the other pieces in the collection. So, but until we figure out what the requirements are and specifications, then we won't know, because I think whatever we determine is the requirement for acceptance into one, then we will know how many pieces need to be moved. But again, we're not getting rid of any pieces, we're just reclassifying.
I think your example, at least what I'm hearing is that those that are in the cultural category are really in memoriam to, or memory of, or to acknowledge, signifying as a time, a person.
An event.
But they're not created as forms of art, they're created to commemorate something. Seems to me that's the distinction that you're trying to make.
I think it's interesting, just knowing some of the other artwork that has been kind of moved around recently. I think I am personally agreeing with the idea of making the two separate collections, just because I think specifically because I went to Palm Springs High School, the section 14 marker. If you don't know what it looks like just off the top of your head, it is quite literally a rock on the floor with a plaque in it. It's not really artwork if we're thinking like of an objective like description or definition. So in my understanding, imagine putting that plaque next to something like popsicles doesn't really coincide as clearly. So I think having two separate distinctions of a cultural collection that does still honor these pieces, like you were saying, we're not getting rid of anything, we're just reorganizing the collection into two subclasses. I think it's important to have those specific dedications, because I feel like that might also expand our collection further, or just help with further discussions on pieces that are going to be or not going to be accepted into our collection. I think that makes that conversation a little bit easier for the commission. It doesn't have to be public art, but it is a memorial and it was produced in a way that is artistic.
And what it ends up doing is it expands the authority of our commission and the importance. And I think that once we look at the collection as it stands and determine which pieces really deserve to be in their own location, administratively, they're not physically moving, but administratively. And we look at what we consider being the cultural collection, we may say, you know what, there's some pieces of Palm Springs history that aren't mentioned in here. We need to fill that in. And there may be some additions of cultural pieces at that point. I could also see this whole collection then having a section in the library, because these are Palm Springs specific. It's section 14. You know, these memorial plaques that we went back and forth over for Francis Stevens Park. They are very specific location, very specific person, very specific time.
In instances where the memorial is something like a living tree with a plaque next to it.
Yeah.
Or a plaza, a location that has been named in memory of something, do these also become elements under in the collection of the cultural collection?
Well, I had a thought today, and again, this all sort of started as the Morse Kite plaque discussion started. And it even the seed was placed in me when we were talking about the Pride Monument then Vice Chair Tom, Vice Chair Tom Burns said, we need a different consideration for monuments and memorials. And we did. And the consideration really comes down to what is the application process and what's the acceptance process. I then was thinking, we have some pieces that are sort of rough around the edges within the collection. They're in the collection, they don't quite fit. We even have something like the painted benches. Okay, the bus benches. Now, those are not technically in the collection, even though they were funded by the Public Art Fund. However, to me, the story for them is more interesting than the actual piece itself. Those were when COVID shut the city down. There's a lot of artists here that needed to be, they were all of a sudden caught without funds. So the Art Commission said, we will pay these artists who are here without money, without a way to make a living. We will pay them to go out and paint these benches. So really, we've got this collection of art that really is a time of the COVID collection, really is what it is in the city. We can group those pieces together and say, this is part of our culture. This is a very specific moment in time in Palm Springs.
Cultural.
Sure.
I mean, if it was an artist who made them.
Yeah, it was that's artists make everything.
Yeah,
And again, I don't want to get too caught up in the specifics.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be quite fuzzy sometimes to get the distinction.
Sure. And I think if it's currently in the collection and we can't agree on the distinction, it stays in the art collection.
Okay.
But again, the key is the main subcommittee is determining how we do the classification. So we can talk, mental gymnastics here, but until we have that, and that's where we want to, if this passes, get people to vote and say, I want to be a part of this discussion. I want to lead it.
I do think making the distinction will make future submittals much easier.
Right.
Because using the Pride Memorial as an example, I think they tried to walk a very razor thin line of whether it was art or memorial. And I don't know that it does either well, in my opinion. And I think that's because they wanted to do a memorial, but
Monument.
a monument, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and they saw us as going through an arts commission process, and I think that kind of drove them in what they came up with. So I do think it'll make it easier for future.
Mr. Jim, I know you have comments.
I was actually going to refer to the comment that was circulated to us before the meeting, which is the community comment pertains to this. Were you going to read it at this time?
Are we going to?
To read it?
Oh, a Tom Dole's comment? We don't need to read it. It was circulated.
Okay.
Yeah. So Tom Dole was the gentleman, he's a local artist, and he was the one who was spearheading the Morris Kite plaques. He's like, why are these hidden? And in his note, he even said, I'm sure there's a lot more of these hidden in the city that no one's got guardianship of. So again, I don't want to get too caught up in what we accept and don't accept. That's the role of the subcommittee to make that determination.
It wasn't to get it confused. I just thought if it wasn't read at the time of public comment at the beginning, does it need to be read in its entirety at some other point during our meeting? Or we just acknowledge that it came in? It will be included with the minutes and that's something. Thank you.
So sorry, maybe I'm getting into the weeds or getting ahead of myself. I know that there was also just a mention of needing to identify extra funding.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on that, because it seems to be tied specifically to the cultural collection.
No, okay, so just as an FYI for the two new commissioners, this process will take 9 to 12 months. Okay, just because we're gonna vote, we're gonna form the subcommittees. The subcommittees will work, they will go back and forth, they will come with their suggestions, the commission will then have to vote on that, and then it needs to go through legal. And then it needs to get approved by council. Okay, so we're not gonna all of a sudden run to the cash register to get money for this, but the money for the majority of the pieces that I think we need to move to the cultural collection, fairly easy maintenance. They get dusted twice a year.
I would just like additional clarification on why we need the extra funding. Is it because it's no longer considered art and it's now considered a memorial? I'm just confused about that.
Okay, so if something is not considered part of the public art collection, we can't use public art funds to maintain it.
Mhm.
Public art funds have a very legal justification of what we can and cannot do. And honestly, there's some pieces in the collection that are public art. And they should be moved out. You know, they did not go through the system, they did not approve them. As you know, Lily said, it's not art, it's a plaque. It deserves attention, it deserves to be elevated. So we're just trying to sort of make things right. And as I said, I'm sure once we do this, there will be more cultural pieces that people say, this deserves to be noticed by the city.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the importance
Yeah.
of figuring out classification, but when we're considering this, I just wanted to make sure I understood sort of what we were getting at and what the consequences would be of reclassifying things.
I will say that as part of the determinant of how we concept it, we can put in there. If somebody's donating a piece, they're responsible for installation. We can put that as a requirement. Before we accept anything.
How do you say your name, Janan?
Janan, yeah.
Janan. I think what you're asking, if I'm not mistaken, is that there are pieces that would then be added into the cultural collection that have not been maintained well.
Yes.
And have had no money, so there may be, as we do this.
Yeah.
Pieces that get added that require allocation of funds to maintain them, store them,
Yeah.
move them,
Yeah.
whatever might be
Yeah.
necessary.
And just to be clear, just I guess to reiterate, so I understand, by reclassifying these two different collections, that would have to be a re-understanding of the budgeting of our funds because of that maintenance.
Right.
Because we would be accepting more pieces or
Yeah.
changing, oh,
And that's, you know. For the most part, a lot of these pieces are maintained currently by Public Works. And a lot of these other pieces could be under maintenance of Public Works. Any other questions before we put this to a vote?
I'd like to make a motion then to approve the creation of two subcommittees. The first,
No, renaming the collection first.
renaming the collection. You want me to just read this?
Yeah.
Renaming the Public Arts Collection to the Palm Springs Art and Cultural Collection. And establishing two subcommittees, one for pieces currently in the public art collection that should be moved to the potential cultural collection, and the subcommittee two that will write up the consideration and approval process for new pieces to be considered and added.
Someone like to second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Unanimous. Congratulations, everybody. As I said, this truly will be the most important thing we do. This is reshaping the cultural landscape of the city. And it's affecting the community and the community's memory. And that's the key thing. This will be a project that the new commissioners will be working on in some form or another for the next 2 to 3 years. Okay. Next step on that is to form the two subcommittees. I would recommend that we do not have overlap. So we don't have one commissioner working on both subcommittees. Because one's determining what the requirements are going to be, and the other one's saying this one belongs here and that. And I think that may be a little conflict of interest. And it's better to keep them separate. It's my recommendation.
Can I make a suggestion though, that we wait until Tina and the rest of the, hopefully if everyone's here before we do up those subcommittees?
Tina has already told me she's interested in being a part of the determining how things are accepted into the commission, into the.
Has Natasha said?
She has not gotten back to me, but I do know she's interested in the inventory component one.
I kind of to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I do think especially Tina and Natasha's, their opinions are really important because they are working on the inventory process, and this is kind of directly in line with what they're already working with, and by moving that as they're not here to apply comment, I think is a little important.
I
But-
state that this was already done for the meeting.
Yeah.
And they did not come. I think that what we can do is the commissioners who are here, who are interested in being part of the subcommittee, can be a part of that subcommittee. We can add to the subcommittee in September. Otherwise, the work's just gonna not get done for 2 months.
I have just a question on, or actually, if there's any comments tied specifically to Tina and Natasha's presence, I think we should add that because mine is a little bit off topic.
Yeah, we have to stay on top. So Is there anyone who would like to participate on the first subcommittee? Again,
Sorry,
knowing we
my
can add
question-
people to the subcommittee in September.
Actually, so sorry. My question is specifically tied to the logistics of the second committee. I see that in the first committee, there is a focus. No, sorry. The second committee that is writing up the consideration and approval process for new pieces to be considered, there is a specification that says public comment must also be built into this process. Will the other committee that is reviewing the current inventory also have that component considered integral? Is that an expectation of that committee?
So the idea of public comment being integral is anytime we redo our ordinances of any way, we consider public comment on that. And so the idea for this one specifically is if we are saying we're going to accept the Morris kite plaques into our collection, there will be an extended public comment period for that. So that's not currently in when we get things in our collection.
Okay.
However, there is for a mural. We have a public hearing for mural where people can make comments on that. So it's just one of those weird loopholes that's never been there. And I think it should be added. I think that if we are putting pieces in that represent the cultural identity of the city, we need to let people know and we need to be able to comment on it. Personally. Again, that would be the determination of the subcommittee saying, here's the requirements that we think needs to be. So again, what I would suggest is really the requirements subcommittee has to do the heavy lifting first. Before you start shifting things around. I think the first step is to look at what other cities are doing. Because as I said, there, and as an aside, I ran this concept by Nick Gonzalez, the head of the Parks and Recreation Department, and he said, yeah, it was like this where I lived. My previous job, they did this thing, they had it split. And ran it by Wayne Olson, he said, great idea, this will help, showing that we got this cultural collection versus public art. So whoever's part of this, start looking to see what other cities do it and how they do their acceptance and the requirement. So it's a little homework, but it will help guide you to what other cities do, which again guides the legality of it.
But the first subcommittee will only be looking at what's currently in the collection in its totality and dividing it up basically between the two. It's not about adding new pieces to it.
No, not yet. But the second subcommittee is doing the specifications and requirements. The second subcommittee has to apply that consistently.
But once both of those activities are done, then new pieces can be considered under those new guidelines.
Correct. Once council has approved it and it's all legal, that will be 9 months away. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly the expectations
Okay.
before I say, oh, before.
Yeah, okay. So really, it's just anybody want to participate in the first subcommittee, the more important one, which is to develop submission and acceptance guidelines for the cultural collection. As I said, Tina has already said she wants to be part of that. Oh, with Carlos?
I can.
Janan?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So Carlos, Janan, and Tina, that's great for that one. Then the next one would be reviewing existing inventory and recommend work should be reclassified.
I'll be coming, I'd be happy to become involved with that one.
Okay, so we have Lily and Jim. I think we can keep it at that. And let's see if Natasha wants to board. But really, it'll be Lily, or sorry, Janan, Carlos, and Tina. We can have Jay set up a Zoom, and we can talk and give guidance on, as I said, pulling in the ordinances from other cities. I think will guide you a lot. Okay.
Gary, are you a member ex officio of both of those subcommittees?
No, what I want to do is just keep people focused and then have them bring the discussion. Then I'll get involved at the very end. That's why I want to ensure there's a balance and there's no overlap. I don't want to guide one over the other. And if we keep it at 3, we don't get into quorum issues. Whoever the vice chair has a being can step in on certain subcommittees at that point as well. Any other questions on it? Great. Next item is project updates. Jay, Wyatt mural update. Anything?
Actually, yes.
Good.
So we did have the city attorney take a look at all the circumstances surrounding the Richard Wyatt mural. And she let us know that the VARA rights expired when Mr. Wyatt unfortunately had passed away. And that the VARA CAPA waiver in the 1997 agreement, which was the original agreement for this mural, is sufficient to support the city's ability to proceed without air approval.
Okay,
So the city could either restore the mural, which qualifies as a conservation of the mural, or remove the mural, which would constitute destruction of the mural, because the waiver combined with the daughter's email, some of the communications the city attorney did look at, legally and practically cover the city without requiring air consent. And just as a reminder, the email said, I kind of wish the city luck in implementing the changes to the mural. So they were on board with whatever the city wanted to do, or at least that's what that letter implied, and city attorneys kind of confirming that.
so the community did put forth a California grant application, John. It was a California grant application, which they did not receive the grant. I think it was I understood why they did it. I think it was the wrong grant they were applying for, when really it should have been a restoration grant, and the grant was for do artwork. So the community members are going to continue to look for restoration grant opportunities, because the restoration is expensive, because it's such a big building. And if you have not been out to see it, go take a look. When you see it in person, you're just like, this is so big. I think that, Carlos, are you still gonna be involved with Desert Highland?
Absolutely, but
Okay.
didn't we have money allocated for?
We do not, we did, but the money, again, anytime we approve a budget, it's project specific and artist specific. So the money was approved for Mr. Wyatt to do the mural. When he passed away, the money disappeared. So all the money needs to be reapproved, but we can't approve money until we know what the project is and who is doing it. So
So that's the first step.
first step will be you and I going to the Desert Highland, and Mr. Brickley will be there, I'm sure, the Desert Highland community meeting, probably in September, and letting them know what's happening and create a plan ahead.
So I have a question about that. Why would you need to know the restorer? Why would you not be approving an allocation for, or the approval to do restoration? Because there are many restoration companies. And so why, don't you want to have an approval to do it and then go out to an RFP, so you know what your budget, and you can let them do it to budget, rather than getting proposals, then having to go back and get backwards, it seems to me.
There's still a divide within the community of whether they want to fully restore a new interpretation of what was there. So it's really just basically go to the community and say, here's the latest, we have opportunity to move forward, but we can't price anything until we know what you want to do.
Okay, but that's going and finding out what they want to do, then approving that you can, whatever that category of restoration is, and then going out to RFP rather than RFP.
Yeah, so
then
what
back
we
for
would,
approval.
what we would do is make an approval to do a call for artists through procurement, because the amount of money, it would have to go through procurement. The mural previously was $280,000 to repair. Yeah, it's a lot of money. That was through tile.
Right.
And we know from seeing the cost of the tiles that are in Thompson Hotel, which were $400,000 for a smaller amount, it may be more. And that way we may say it cannot be tile, it needs to be painted. And yes, this was improperly installed, the water got on it and melted immediately. Like after 2 years being installed back then. And there's new finishes and new paintwork, new paint styles that can be used that are better maintenance. And again, if you haven't been there, it's on the south side of the building, which is just getting baked in the sun all day. So it was an important mural in a bad location. So we will do what we can to repair it, knowing it may only be repaired for 10 to 15 years. So, but it will kick off through restoration, through procurement, and then they will come back to us with artists. Okay. Next item, ordinance review and update committee.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how you want to handle this. The approval of the cultural collection would likely overlap with the ordinance as you go through and redefine the purpose of the Arts Commission. So I don't know if that you'd want to have that folded into the discussion. You know, maybe this time last year where we actually started forming subcommittees to look at the ordinance to address things like the time a developer has to request a reimbursement, things like that. So it's separate, but still the same. It's related to some of the other ones.
And as we determine this subcommittee is gonna say, here's what would be considered for application into the cultural committee, they will tighten up the requirements to be considered art as well. Because it's some of the requirements of the ordinances are a little loose. So,
I don't see that. I don't think art and ordinances define what's art.
but we still need to put it legally in there. There's certain,
How do you define legally what art is?
Every other city does it.
Rests with the commission.
Yeah.
As the approval of the pieces come through, the commission makes the decision.
Well, that's a decision-making power.
Yeah.
That's not defining what art is.
but the art ordinances define what art is currently. And how we go about bringing art into the
It
collection.
defines art.
It defines how it's brought into the collection.
Right, but that's a decision-making process. It's not the definition of art.
Well, we're not defining art, we're defining what Palm Springs art collection will be. So there's definitions of what it is and how you bring it into the collection in the ordinances now. So I'm just saying, we need to revisit that. And make it a little more appropriate, because there's some interpretations that I don't agree with. So,
I understood the exercise when I volunteered to be on the subcommittee as I look over the entire Public Arts Commission legislation, the funding mechanism for it, and anything that was related or needed to be improved. And I didn't recall that it was the definition of what art is in a philosophical sense, but rather what are objects that can be called public art that we're then responsible for and where they go.
but you just said that, what can be called public art? That's the definition.
Public art is a definition, things that are paid for under the public art program. Without philosophically saying they have to also qualify as art before we then pay for them.
Well, it does sound like it'll be part of the conversation for the subcommittee to determine what would be a monument versus what is considered for the art collection. So it sounds like it's gonna be a bridge the commission will have to cross at some point. I'm not sure if it's the definition of art, but maybe process in terms of selecting what goes into the art collection.
We're not defining the ineffable, no, we are defining how we handle it in the city and pay for it. I also had a particular personal interest in holding renewed look at the mural legislation,
Again, the mural is under the jurisdiction of planning.
which I hope that we could look at as part of.
Our only assessment in planning, our only involvement in the mural ordinance is the artistic value. Everything else is under planning.
Could this subcommittee and then this commission not make recommendations to the city council for a rethink of where murals, where the weight of gravity resides for murals and the way that they're.
Only in regards to our role, which is artistic value.
I think that our role should be as muscular as possible.
Well,
I agree with that.
I don't know what we would do beyond the artistic value. We're not engineers.
Well, yeah, and what the planning department does is it compares the proposed mural with the planning ordinance and the planning municipal code to see it's not 6 inches over, extending over a building, and it's kind of technical work. So then once they have that all packaged and approved, then it's put over into the Public Arts Commission's hands for the artistic value, as the chair has mentioned, but you know, if you see an opening, you know, it's possible, but you know, process wise, all the technical stuff right now is taken care of by the planning department.
What is missing? What do you think should be our responsibility that they're taking care of?
I think that we have the authority and the capabilities of nurturing and encouraging murals in the city. And if that
We
involves
can do that.
writing a cooperative process between the art overview of this committee and the safety and engineering aspects that a city department has, those could be knit together in a more cooperative way so that people who are proposing murals don't have as anomalous hoops to go through to install them.
And especially if they're painted. I mean, when you talk engineering, you're talking about something that may be a tile or another form of applique, but a paint doesn't need to go through any kind of serious engineering
But
review.
planning reviews colors on every building. Even if it's painted, they review that. They have certain things that are acceptable and not acceptable.
Yeah.
But that's making the distinction then about art. Art, again, going back to this whole thing about definition and defining art, I understand how you can say, here's what a cultural monument is or a memorial is.
Yep.
That's easy, much easier to define.
Yep.
You started to at the beginning of this meeting.
Yep.
In this discussion. But saying now, well, you can't have that mural because it has blue in it and it's not.
That has never once happened.
But in anticipation and trying to consider, when you set out ordinances, you have to think of all the things that could happen. So you have an ordinance that addresses the probability of that, correct?
Yeah.
And it seems to me that you can include the planning commission, but it's more, like you said, more cooperative. It could be the sequence of events potentially.
So well, first, it's not plan commission, it's plan department.
Planning
Which is
department.
yeah, did you know that? I think you're personalized to what you went through on your property, but you're speaking as a commissioner, not as an individual.
No,
So
I'm not.
hang on. I have never seen a problem with somebody saying, I want to do a mural. And the art commission won't, or the city won't let me. The only times it's happened is when they've tried to put advertising up and claimed it's a mural.
They took down the mural downtown.
Well,
Was it advertising?
that was up to the planning department, and I bet the planning department didn't even look at that, because I've seen them too. And they do them with light projections, but again, I'm not the mural police.
But we don't have the time, and this is not the
Yeah.
time to flesh out all of these issues. But as I look at ordinance review and update committee, I think that these are a set of issues that could be well considered in such a group as it looks at the ordinance.
Look, I would love to review the ordinances with the parks. And art in the parks and maintenance around the parks. That's not our jurisdiction. You know, I think we can make things stated in our ordinances, but we can't enforce it. So again, with the murals, there has never been somebody who came to the commission and said, I want to do a mural, help me. And we said no. Never once. They stopped in planning because they wanted to do either there was safety issues because it was right near a road and they thought it would be too distracting, whatever, or they were advertised. But this never once. What has happened is when homeowners or small business owners have put out murals, neighbors have complained, and then they come to the art commission and say, we need your approval on this. So I just don't see, we can change what we want, but still it's gonna have to go through planning eventually. So the question then comes down to, do we want to approve it, take our time on the agenda approving a mural that gets stuck or denied in planning? I'd rather it's get approved in planning, come to us, like I said, we've changed murals that have come to us. There was the map one that came to us 2 years ago. The commission all had thought, change this, make it more contemporary, and the artist changed it, and it was done. So, but planning ensured that there were no safety issues and all that. So on one hand, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting and they're indemnifying us.
Do they limit their review to their ordinances under planning?
Yeah, they've never once made an aesthetic decision. They've never once. They've never said, you can't do naked women, you can't do color, none of that has ever come up. Every time it's been to the art commission. So, as I said, I've just never felt that there was this need to claim ownership on that when we're trying to deal with our own stuff. I know the confusion, but we've never said no. And even I think you were in the meeting when we reviewed the one at the hotel downtown. So that's nice. Let's just verify it's not your logo, your trademark.
Which one was this?
I forget the name of it. Drift Hotel?
A Drift Hotel.
Drift Hotel. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a simple design, but you know, they proved it up that they had other artwork with that same type of design.
And two of the commissioners thought it looked like a logo. And we said, let's just make sure it's not advertising. And Jay reached out to them and said, do you have this on stationery? No, business cards. No, it's just great, good to go. Planning didn't even have that consideration. So as I said, in my time on the commission, we've never said no. We've asked for design revisions. Planning doesn't even care what we ask. So, and again, the public review, public hearing is for neighbors to get comments. Because for any mural, you need to notify anybody within a certain amount of feet from where the mural is going to be. Planning does that. And then our hearings are opportunity to get feedback from a neighborhood perspective.
Well, we formed this ordinance, I think. The first or second meeting that
Yep.
the review committee, and we've not seen each other or gotten together since. So is this something now that's going to be more formalized, that we're gonna move it forward?
I think that's the question,
Yeah.
is did you want to fold it into the work of the cultural, or keep it separate and move it forward on a separate?
I mean, my suggestion would be that it gets folded in the overall process. I would imagine, not delegated to this subcommittee.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion.
I would think, I mean, this subcommittee is going to be doing very focused work.
Yeah.
The subcommittee
For the cultural, it's very focused. Whereas the other one, you know, so I know that I spoke to the mayor and Wayne about changing the payment component of the fees. That's really an economic development. They will do what they think is best, and they will come to us and say, this is going in your ordinances. Jay, what are your thoughts? One will be folded in eventually, but it depends on.
Yeah, it probably is better addressed separately. And you know, there were a number of items that were laid out initially by past commissions, so we've got that. I think that went out for like the first review. We could revisit that and incorporate some of the business side comments. I know you know, the watchdog over this all is the Desert Builders Association, because the builders pay the art fees every time they do a development, so they want to make sure it reasonably goes towards public art and not towards other things that are not enhancing the community. So it's probably worth having a conversation with them also.
Yeah, but that's just for the fee payment.
For the fee, correct.
Yeah, so that has nothing to do with acceptance of the collection or makes collection or anything like that.
Yeah, that's something else.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Does that answer your question? I know you don't like the answer, but I just don't see how murals are,
I think the project should go forward.
so.
The ordinance review should go forward, and I think that the discussions can happen in that setting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would suggest we make it more formal, so it does.
Which forms we want and record it if we want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be a good idea.
Who was on that committee? The two of you?
And me and then
Three.
us.
Okay.
So if Natasha's, she has to move off one,
Right.
but you weren't on this one for the cultural. You weren't on that subcommittee.
I just want to be on this.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Beautiful shade updates,
That could be integrated with Art in the Park too.
Art in the Park, Artscape in the Parks, beautiful shade. You know, really the big announcement is that the building official notified us that no permits are required for these projects. So when the artist is ready to do the installation, you know, I've asked them to coordinate with the Parks Department as to setting a time and date, and so they would just go in, get the thumbs up from Parks and commence. Now, that works for beautiful shade since they're providing their own contractors to do the base. We have gone after 2 RFPs to try and find a contractor to do the base for the artscape in the parks. And so far, it's kind of lukewarm responses, but we did get, thanks to Chair Armstrong, in touch with, with the city of Palm Desert, who gave us a couple leads, and both of them have been receptive. They're reviewing, the work to be done, and they're, so that's promising, I hope, so.
Yeah, so Jay sent it out twice and no one has replied.
Is that because it's so small?
It could be, we don't know,
Don't know.
which is, bad to put out.
Was it for 1 or 3 or
For
10?
4.
For 4.
Yeah.
And what size?
These were the Artscape of the Parks projects, so they vary from like 15 feet tall for the rover down to the 3 little pedestals for the name the cactus.
Shapes
Wait,
and
It's
but the proposal was for the slab, for the.
Yeah.
For the slab.
So the one slab for Spaghetti and Barista Park is substantial.
Yeah.
And the other ones are kind of small, but it's significant work. And so when people don't respond, we don't know if they're saying it's too much work or it's not enough work. Or it could be, when Jane and I met with Dana yesterday, the building commissioner, he said, we're getting in the season where it's hard to pour cement. You need to pour it at night, or you need to continue to wet it. And the city requirements that you can't do pouring at night. So I suggested to Jay to find out if they can get it done by September.
It's also, I mean, I may be wrong on this because I deal with larger projects, but it's not a truckload. And nobody wants to mix concrete by hand. And it requires rebar. So just looking at the project fundamentals, it doesn't kind of fall in a place where by truckload of cement comes and it pours it, laying your form and your, do you know what I mean? It's a little, otherwise you have people mixing concrete by hand, right?
Yeah.
So.
Good to know.
So. But hopefully the Palm Desert Leaves will deliver for us. And our inventory maintenance update, Natasha's not here. Let's skip on that one. The horses.
Taming horses, artist, check was sent to the artist last week.
Yeah.
You should have it. The horse is ours.
Okay.
Mr. Brickley will be assisting with the project to get it installed by the creek. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you had a chance to reach out regarding flags.
I have not yet.
Okay,
I wanted to wait
okay.
until
Okay,
we
so
all know.
we own them. So that is taken care of.
And if anybody would like to shadow me on this project, these are the 4 pieces that were Desert X initiated on Long Talkers Canyon Way. We're moving to North Riverside along the wash there by the footbridge. And if you recall, they had the horses and then they had 2 poles behind them with a flag, and the flag was treated almost a series of illustrations that told the story of 2 gentlemen meeting. The flags deteriorated within a couple months. So we either need to get flags redone in a heavier material that will withstand the heat and the wind, or another way of illustrating that story.
Can you do them on metal, like metal flags?
I don't know. You could, one of the things that was even discussed with the community is they wanted, there's a footbridge there across the watch. They wanted a mural inside the footbridge inside it when you're walking across. I said, well, maybe we could put the illustration in here as a painted mural rather than as flags. And we could maybe have the artist come and help there because there's a school nearby and have the school kids paint it or something like that.
May I shadow?
I'm sorry.
Am I allowed to ask to shadow? It sounds interesting.
I'm sure you can ask questions.
Oh,
Shadow.
I'm shadow
No,
you.
someone's shadow.
Oh, shadow me. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Okay. Shadow.
Yeah, it is Desert X pieces. I'm creating curriculum off of
Okay.
these, so.
Yeah, great. And then I'll just keep you CC'd on all communications with the people and we'll go from there.
My only concern, just to say about doing them inside the bridge, is they'd be vandalized so easily.
potentially, you know, at least at that sign, it's not very hybrid, so you could put anti-graffiti paint on it. And if the school kids painted it, they may be less apt to vandalize it. Just as a thought, but I agree, you know, look what we learned with Desert Island, never know who does what in the community. Okay. Commissioner agenda requests and comments. This is a time where we allow the commissioners to say something they would like addressed at a future meeting. No one else can comment on it because the specifics have not been agendized, so we can't really have discussion, but you can make us say, hey, I really think we need to address X, Y, and Z. Like Jim can say, I'd like to really address murals and review murals.
I'd like to add to the agenda again for further discussion. My concept about using a grading system for doing large reviews.
Great. The soonest this will get is September.
That's fine,
Yeah.
whenever, September, October.
Jim,
None at this time, thank you for the offer.
Carlos,
No, it doesn't come to my mind anything.
okay. Lily.
I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add to the next agenda.
Jay, anything to add?
No, not for this item.
Okay. No report from director of staff?
Just quickly, airport staff let me know that they will be moving the painted benches from the front doors of the airport to the doors that are more located to the south.
Okay.
So that's it.
And the garbage cans that are painted to match them will go at the same time?
She did not mention the garbage cans, but I would expect they would.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to use the classic airport benches.
Just verify that the garbage cans are going, because they were designed as a collection.
Okay. And commissioners, you had mentioned something about a study session. Would you be willing to do that?
Let's wait until September when we have the full commission here
Very good. That's it for me then.
to discuss. Mr. Chair?
Jay's comments reminded me that I would like to propose a agenda item either for the September meeting or in the fullness of time, because it depends on the airport commission. But I think it would be really interesting for them, once they've announced who the outcome of their choice of a curator company, our curator company for the airport collection, which I was involved in designing. Once they announce that publicly, they might come here and brief us on the next steps after that and introduce the company to us.
My two last comments are I've also invited Wayne Olson, the head of economic development, to come present to the commission in the fall. Because every major economic program, in fact, as you recall from my presentation, involves public art. And I want him to be able to discuss that with how cities envisioning public art happening as we move forward. That'll be the convention center, the library, the airport, everything has public art attached to it. Okay.
I just want to comment on that, it'd be very important because art's a major part of the connectivity.
Yeah.
Subcommittee and the urban planning RFQ that's going out should be including at least some objective.
And it really is, arts and culture is a pillar that he views as the economic driver of the city. So. And then the last thing, Jay and I are having lunch on Tuesday with the staff. Palm Desert has a staff person who does public art. And we're going out for lunch with her to pick her brain on certain ordinance issues and changes, how they deal with certain things. The fact that the city does not approve murals. But if the mural gets damaged, just paint it over immediately. So all those sort of things that we're gonna pick her brain on and hopefully work together on sharing resources. And we'll know more from that. And I think if that's successful, we'll start maybe going to India. Sure.
Well, with the murals too, Coachella had a whole program about that as well.
Yeah.
Where they included the community mural projects, so I think maybe Coachella, if murals was something that we were touching.
The challenge with murals in Palm Springs is so many of our buildings are historic.
Right.
And we can't do a thing on
Mhm.
them. And so that's why the majority of the murals are on private property.
Mhm.
And as Commissioner Kitty pointed out, they're painting it, they're doing it. That's great, but it still needs to go through planning and some pass.
Yeah.
We haven't initiated many murals in the commission. The little outside murals. The only one that I initiated my time here is the airport. So. And it was on a part of the airport that's not historic. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion for the Public Arts Commission to adjourn to the meeting on September 4th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in Council Chambers, Austrian City Hall, located at 2 East Tompkins Stand.
I'd like to second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jane, now the meeting's over, we should consider moving the October meeting. That is a Jewish holiday.
Yom Kippur.